Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Economics 330, Global Trade and Political Economy at the City University of New York, MEC. Today is Tuesday, December 9th, 2025. And welcome to today's lecture and the last module. Of course, this week is the last module for this course, Global Trade and Political Economy, to restate Econ 330. This week, we will discuss current and developing issues in global political economy, and we would close the lecture with an overview of what your finals would include. Of course, finals review and the actual final starts from next week. But let me also congratulate every one of you for making it to the last week of class. Do please end the semester on a high note by completing this week's assessment and upcoming final exam. Teaching this class continues to be a very rewarding experience for me, and I hope the learning experience has also been rewarding for you. As you now know, the three distinct theories in international political economy are the realist, one, second, the liberal, and third, the critical perspectives, have evolved and influenced each other over time. And some theoretical approaches such as hegemonic stability theory and regime theory draw upon more than one of these perspectives. Quick refresher. Regime theory within international relations argues that the international institutions or regimes affect the behavior of states or other international actors. Notably, a regime is a set of principles, norms, rules, and decision-making procedures in a given substantive area in international relations. Hegemonic stability theory, or HST, argues that the international system is more likely to remain stable when a single state is a dominant world power or hegemon. Thus, the end of hegemony diminishes the stability of the international system. To help link theory and practice, it may be instructive to focus on the three main themes. The first is globalization, the second is North-North relations, and the third is South-North-South relations. That said, and with that context, here are your learning objectives for the week. The first is to analyze contemporary events in global economic environment and explain them in context of international political economy. To which I would say, an example of contemporary events includes the North-South divide on technology capacity. The Economist magazine recently reported on the trend of reverse technology transfer in the automobile sector. Let me explain. Until recently, the Chinese government had a 50+2 automobile policy. This was a long-standing rule requiring foreign automobile firms to partner with state-owned companies to manufacture their cars in China or face huge tariffs on imported vehicles. 50+2 policy also limited foreign auto manufacturers to 50% ownership cap and no more than 2 joint ventures. This policy often resulted in forced technology transfer from automobile companies in the global north to Chinese automobile companies, which are, of course, in the global south. The Economist magazine reports that this policy so rapidly improved China's automobile technology capacity that in 2025, the flow of technology has reversed. According to The Economist, in a recent presentation on its business in China, executives from Volkswagen, a major European automobile manufacturer, happily noted that it was leveraging local Chinese partners for technology transfer. BMW, a European maker of Porsche vehicles, again from the global north, as is Volkswagen, has built up a team of 3,000 local Chinese engineers and software developers and has started collaborating with Chinese firms such as Alibaba, another internet giant from China, and Huawei, a Chinese maker of telecoms gear that also produces systems for cars. So you can see how in the beginning, about 20, 30 years ago, Western or countries from the core or the north, excuse me, were concerned about the pilfering of that technology as they did business in China. Eventually, there was a bit of a technology transfer, excuse me, about that, from China to to from China to from the north to um, the south, which is north in this case, of course, being the industrialized Western countries, to the south, in this case, China. But China, over time, built up its capacity, its technological capacity vis-a-vis automobiles, that today, Western countries, aka countries from the north, are leaning on China and counting to borrow its technology vis-a-vis automobile technology to spruce up the technological capacity of the vehicles. So this is a reverse technology transfer that The Economist magazine points out that is ongoing in the global system. So the second learning objective is to critically explain current trends in North-South economic relations, right? So we've understood North-South um, trade relations as it relates to a contemporary economic issue. But now, what are the issues, current trends in North-South economic relations? Right. That's the second idea behind the learning objectives. Which, if you were to really think about the news that broke today, major current trend in this regard is how the politics of protectionism is driving trade tariff. Again, how the politics of protectionism is driving trade tariff and other non-tariff trade barriers, which are disrupting the global economy and creating market distortions and international trade disruptions. As one example, the BBC, which is, of course, and I hope everybody knows this, means the British Broadcasting Corporation. The BBC reports that President Donald Trump unveiled a 12 billion farm aid package today alone, aimed at helping farmers impacted by low crop prices and the Trump administration's ongoing trade wars. According to the BBC, while US farmers, part of the global north, have broadly supported President Trump, the agriculture sector has been disrupted by protectionist trade disputes during President Trump's second term, particularly with China, a global south country. And, and BBC goes on to say that US sorghum and soybean farmers have been hit hard by falling demand from Chinese buyers due to the Trump administration's trade dispute with China, the greatest importer of their crops, thus laying bare the protectionist paradox. And this is really, really critical. Again, at the beginning of this class, perhaps the first or second week of this class, I mentioned the importance of dialectical thinking, where you really develop the critical analytic ability of looking at an issue from all sides of the equation. And here is a paradox. The protectionist paradox of the interplay between social systems and governments and their influence on trade policy that exacerbate the paradox between resistance to free trade. So once you start putting up barriers, you are resisting free trade. But that comes at the cost of a desire to also grow export markets. And we've seen this script play out before. So, but let's keep going. The US-China North-South protectionist trade dispute underscored the significance of avoiding a security dilemma or spiral model, where each state's pursuit of national interest, economic power, and security maximization paradoxically makes other states feel less secure, thus occasioning countermeasures and cycles of escalating tension with consequential undesired outcomes of greater insecurity and intensified threats to interstate peace and commerce. Now, it's very helpful and indeed it's imperative that I make clear that these protectionist measures has not been one-sided. Again, I began this by mentioning the Chinese government until recently 50+2 automobile policy, which was predicated on a tariff for imported vehicles. And of course, to avoid that tariff, you could choose to set up shop in China. But if you wanted to do that, the Chinese government would cap your ownership of a joint venture. If you wanted to set up manufacturing plant in China, Chinese government will require you to go into a joint venture with a Chinese firm. And they will cap the core North countries' ownership stake in that joint venture to no more than 50%. And then they will cap the number of joint ventures automobile companies from the North can hold to no more than 2. So you could see how that protectionist measure led to China's rapid buildup of capacity in the automobile sector. More recently, China has also doubled down. Again, countermeasures by restricting and then loosening and then restricting and then threatening to loosen or restrict again access of countries from the core North access to refined precious metals. These precious metals or rare earth metals, as I hope you now know, are really critical to driving technologies that undergird the green economy or the economies of the future, from rockets to missiles to MRI machines to electric cars, you name it, to wind turbines. They all have elements of rare earth minerals that are processed and refined, and of which China has a near monopoly on the market. So this is the back and forth, right? But again, the challenge is that this creates a security dilemma where each state's pursuit of national interest, economic maximization, economic power and security maximization creates the opposite effect. It actually makes countries less secure because other states will feel less secure and therefore enact countermeasures. And a cycle of escalating tension will then ensue, with consequential undesired outcomes of greater insecurity, intensified threat to interstate peace, and or commerce. Well, this intensified threat to interstate commerce is what is occasioning the $12 billion subsidy for farmers. The farmers have not been made better off. The demand for their goods are suffering. And this is opening up opportunities for soy and sorghum growers in Brazil, as an example, who the Chinese increasingly consider as alternate sources for American farm products. Significantly, subsidies also create market distortions. That is the other part of it. So it's not just the farmers that the government is attempting to make whole. Indeed, the farmer bailout raises fear about trade war winners and losers. The BBC continues that the Trump administration's bailout plans for farmers have frustrated many other kinds of businesses that have also been hurt as the new taxes on imports raise costs for the firms based in the US and alienate their long-term customers overseas. In the long run, the challenge is that the inefficiency and market distortions of subsidy and tariffs eventually leads to higher prices, i.e. inflation, and economic downturn. Now, if you think back, this is not a new phenomenon. We covered this weeks ago when this whole scenario that is very identical played out post-World War One. Remember the infamous Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, which dramatically raised duties on thousands of goods to shield American farmers and manufacturers, but also triggered massive global retaliation, sparking trade wars and worsening the Great Depression by collapsing international trade. This collapse of international trade and the global economy eventually gave rise to the rules-based trading system of the liberal perspective in international political economy. First, through the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT, which was later superseded by the World Trade Organization, or WTO. Arguably, the WTO is no longer robust enough to mediate the great power competition that is emerging in global commerce. And at some point, I suspect the world would arrive at a strengthened multilateral trading order, be it a new framework or a rework or a strengthening of the WTO. But ultimately, security maximization will lead to countermeasures, and those countermeasures will lead to general downturn in the economy. So this is the end of the formal part of the lecture. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture, next week, our last week and module, our focus will be on preparing and taking the final exam. As such, let me quickly provide an overview of the final exam. So I'm going to go through this again next week, but I don't want it to be all new by next week. So I'm going to kind of go through it quickly. And then next week, Tuesday or Monday, I'll also deliver a lecture and providing an overview on your finals. But here it goes. Here are the critical points about your finals. There will be two parts to your final exam. There is the first part, a multiple choice section, and the second is a short essay. So the first part is a multiple choice section, and the second part would be a short answer section. The multiple choice part of your final exam will have 25 multiple choice questions on all of the course materials. Now, you will have 2 attempts, and each attempt is timed at 1 hour. The score on the multiple choice part would be an average of the first and your second attempt if both are used. Of course, if you use one attempt, then the score of that one attempt will be your score for the multiple choice section, right? That's clear. The short answer part of the exam is based exclusively on a document that has been posted in the exam folder and Chapter 10, International Economic Development. So those will be the two sources for the short answer part of your exam. Note the section on structural adjustment programs. Please download and read the document. There are two questions in the short answer part of the exam. In responding to these questions, you must not, and I underscore, you must not quote or copy any information from the internet. You must not use artificial intelligence or AI to generate your answer. If you do, you will receive a 0 for the entire short answer section. Let me repeat. There are two questions in the short answer part of your exam. In responding to these questions, you must not quote or copy any information from the internet. You must not use artificial intelligence or AI to generate your answer. If you do, you will receive 0 for the entire answer part, or the entire short answer part. Just as important, the short answer part of your exam will require the practice of rigorous writing, good grammar, complete sentences, complete ideas with minimal spelling or structural syntactic errors. Do please take seriously the rigorous writing requirement. Let me repeat that again. Just as important as not copying from the internet and not using AI for your short answer part, it is as important that you practice rigorous writing, good grammar, complete sentences, complete ideas with minimal spelling or structural or syntactic errors. Again, do please take seriously the rigorous writing requirement. The short answer part is timed at 1 hour, and you will have 2 attempts. The second attempt can be used to edit your answer before the deadline. If you're not happy with your first attempt. Of course, if you're happy with your first attempt, you can leave well enough alone. Here is the last critical part. Please note that both parts of the final exam will be due on December 22nd at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Exams are due to be submitted through Brightspace on December 22nd at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. You cannot email it to me. It will not be accepted. There will be no other mechanism to turn in your exam than through Brightspace. And you're not going to be able to turn it in after 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on the 22nd of this month. So, in closing, don't worry about it. We will go through the finals exam again next week. But in closing, thank you again for the privilege of being your Economics 330 Global Trade and Political Economy instructor. Again, I can't say it enough, and I truly mean this. Teaching this class continues to be a very rewarding experience for me and a privilege. And I hope a rewarding learning experience for you as well. Now, I am confident that if you've paid attention and you've walked through the assessment of through the past 15 weeks, that you're going to be able to hold your own in any conversation in global economics and political economy. And with that, I wish you good luck completing your last week's assessment, and I look forward to you doing an even better job with the finals next week. Take care. Good night.